So, Jai Bhim and Namo Buddhaya to all of you. uh, for the course of next three sessions, today and day after tomorrow, and after following that, day after tomorrow, we will have three sessions on what we thought as a seminar on Saddhamma, which is about the common vision of both Bodhisattva Babasaheb Ambedkar and Bodhisattva Ashok. And the occasion, of course, is the Vijayadashmi, Ashok Vijayadashmi, which is considered to be the day on which Ashoka converted to Buddhism. And it's the same day on which Babasaheb Ambedkar took the Dhamma Diksha. It's a very significant day, and it's known throughout the history as the Ashok Vijayadashmi. So what I thought today is begin a kind of a discussion on Ashok and some of his ideas, which are very important for us today. So I have prepared a small presentation, which I will go through. So let me begin with the presentation. Okay. So can you see my presentation, Nikhil?
Yes, sir, it is visible.
Okay. So this is supposed to be the historical portrait of Ashoka. There are very few portrait of Ashoka which have been identified. The man who has given so much of the artistic images, the pillars and the rock edicts, was so shy of, making himself known or popular. So we have very few of his portraits which are available to us, and we are not sure whether they really represent Ashoka. So our seminar is on Saddhamma, a common quest of Bodhisattva Ashok and Bodhisattva Babasaheb Ambedkar for Dhamma Rajya. That is ethical republic. Of course, it's a ethical democracy and so on and so forth. So next, no, next. So why this topic is important? There are many reasons why this topic is important. One of the reasons this topic is important is the future of India depends on what we follow, the path we undertake, and the path that we can undertake are actually. 1 minute, there is some technical issue because I have to admit people also. Admit. Sorry about that. Okay. So the future of India depends on what path we take, whether we take Ashoka's Dhamma as the path or the goal of a country, or we take Manu Dharma as the path or the goal of a country. And on that depends the future of a country. Therefore, this topic is very important to study and understand. The stories that a country tells itself are just as critical to its functioning as its army, its laws, its borders, and its flag. So, of course, there are the stories of foundation of countries in all over the places. People have, the Americans have their own stories of as to how their country came into being. The Chinese have their own stories of how their countries came into being. Everywhere there are stories as to how their countries came into being. So it's very important that what story we tell the country is very critical, because it's as critical as the functioning of its army, its laws, its borders, and its flag. And where did the country emerge from, and where might it be heading? This is also another very important question. Now, the national mythology is important because many of the countries which are found, they are found on what is called the mythologies, and they are called the national mythologies. But in case of India, and as we are going to see in further, that in the case of Ashoka, it's not about national mythology; it's a national history that we are going to look into. And then, of course, there are contested historiography as to what constitutes the country, how the country came to being. So what is known as historiography, different people have different versions of the historicity of that particular country. So this is very important point, that even the history is contested. So in case of Ashoka, it's not based on any fanciful thinking, it's based on what is called the evidence. And the other stories that we see around, they are not based on the evidence, they are like the fanciful thinking. Now, according to Benedict Anderson, it's very important for a country to have a sense of what is called the imagined community. So imagined community manifests through public rituals like firework shows, school curricula, the discourse of politicians, and touchstones reinforced by constant references in the press and pop culture. And also important is the question, what do we find in the past? So it's not that the past is not important. For every country, the past is important. And that's what, this topic is very important to understand the history of a country in terms of the advent of Ashoka and, the foundation of the country itself. So what we are talking today is not a story. It's a history that we are going to look into. Now, in case of India, the foundational history of India is based on Ashoka and Buddhism. And we are going to look into that. The foundational myth of India, that different people have different, mythical stories to claim that, the India, India, our country came into being based on such and such myths. And they are sometimes semi-fictional or wholly imaginary histories of the origin of people. So this is very important, that the Ashoka or Buddhism offers us the foundational history of India, contrast it with the mythical or semi-fictional accounts based on the Brahminical sources. So, as we are going to see that the Indian nation is founded on an idea, and even the Ashoka's Jambudvip or Ashoka's empire was also founded on idea of the Dhamma, which we are going to look into. So the myths of founding are very important, and we need to have an interpretive machinery to understand the history of India. We need some kind of a matrix of ideas through which we can begin to interpret the history of India. And the shared understanding of past is crucial for idea of India, because these days what is happening is, and we are going to look into that, as to how a particular view, a particular myth about the origin of India is being circulated and reinforced again and again through the curriculum, through the various sort of media. These ideas are sort of you know uh, propagated. Now we turn to what is India and why Buddhism is essential to understand our country, our history. So, of course, the if we have to understand the idea of India, we have to go back to uh, what is called the before many thousand years, like 2000 years, and the nation state that we see today, like the nation state of US, America, or even the countries of the Europe, they are found, they came into being just a couple of 100 years back. But the China is comparable to Indian history, and there is a Chinese historian or a scholar. His name is Ge Zhaogong, and he tried to, he wrote a very beautiful book, which is known as What is China, and that model of understanding the history of China can be similarly applied to India, because as a scholar historian, what he tried to do is, you know, have tried to oh wait as a scholar historian, what he has tried to do is he has tried to bring into account what is called the many aspects of China in terms of its history, ethnic groups, culture, and so on and so forth. And unless we understand the history of that country, of a country, unless we understand the ethnic groups in a country, unless we understand something of a culture of that country, we cannot really understand the idea of that country, and that is applicable to our India as well, because many of the histories, much of the history is as if wiped away, wiped out. Even Ashoka was a forgotten figure as far as India is concerned. Nobody knew about Ashoka before 200, 300 odd years, because he was completely forgotten. His name was totally forgotten. And therefore, it's very important for us, if we have to understand the idea of India, we have to understand what is called the real history of India. So, so the Indian history begins with Buddhism. Before Buddhism, there is no material evidence. There is only myth, there are only speculations. But the advent of Buddhism offers the concrete account of the history. For example, we can pinpoint to the exact location in which the place where the Buddha was born. We can pinpoint to the exact location where the Buddha was enlightened. We can pinpoint to the exact location where the Buddha
बघा बघा तिथे आणलेलं भाज्या
his first talk. Okay, so we have all these evidences, and if we look at the so-called history of India, it has to begin with the concrete evidences that we begin to get after the advent of the Buddha, and after Ashoka, we get so many of the evidences about what was happening in this country, what was the political shape of this country, and so on and so forth. Why this history is important? Because it also helps us to understand the position of India, particularly the India of that time, in the history of the world, because the Indian culture, particularly Buddhism, has affected the world like no other phenomena has affected. For example, if we look at the countries in the East today, they were all influenced. They are even today they are influenced by Buddhism. Look at Thailand, look at Sri Lanka, look at Burma, look at Japan, look at Korea. Even if you look at the Gandhara before the advent of Islam there, or Afghanistan, Persia, so on and so forth. So we can see that if we have to understand India today, we have to understand the roots of its origin and its place in the history, at the time of Ashoka and after that. And there is another question which is, I think, very important for all of us to understand is, did Buddhism disappear from India? And how did Buddhism survive in the Indian context? And another very interesting thing that I would like to put for you is, like in case of China, Ge Zhaogong talks about the ethnic groups, and he talks about 5, 6 odd ethnic groups. And when we talk about India, we have so many things to look into, and therefore the situations become very interesting when we think about India, because we have to think in terms of many things. So this is what is the beginning of it. And the idea of India, the Ashokan idea of India and the modern idea of India. So when we are having this seminar, and no, of course, after speaking for some time, I'm going to open up the seminar for your comment, discussion, or anything that you would like to add. So it's very important to understand what is the idea of India, what is India, what constitutes India. And the most important question that we will be grappling with is the actually what is happening. So many people are joining now, so I have to add them being a host. I don't know whether I can make Nikhil host. Nikhil, is that okay for you? But sharing is not there. Right. Nikhil, can you make me host again? Nikhil,
Yes, sir. Just give me a minute.
sorry about this technical glitch. So many people are joining, so my attention is divided. I have to add people and also concentrate on talking. So I made Nikhil host, but my PPT has gone. And or Nikhil, you can do multiple participants can share. Okay. So let me see if I can share. Yes. Okay. Okay. Share. Okay. So these are the questions that we are going to look into. And as I was preparing for this presentation, which is spread for 3 sessions, I came across this very interesting news yesterday. See, this is what is happening in the country today. The people are contesting the idea of India, and this particular paper cutting of Mohan Bhagwat would indicate to us what is happening in this country. He's saying Hindus embrace everyone, asserts Bhagwat. And he says, unite to make India a Hindu nation. That is the stand of RSS. So now, as we are talking about the idea of India and trying to find out the historical roots of India, the study of Ashok becomes so important, as I said, that he offers the only legitimate ground to understand the history of India. Otherwise, we are shrouded in the mythical stories, in the myths. It's only Ashoka and what he left behind offers us the source or the root of the idea of India. So you see, this program took place yesterday, in Jaipur, and there he is asserting that we have to make India a Hindu nation. So in this particular situation, this topic is so important to understand the vision of Ashoka and Dr. Babasaheb Ambedkar. Today, as I told you that we are going to we are concentrating on Ashoka. So you see, there are many Ashokas. But we're only going to concentrate on historical Ashoka. And as Charles Allen, one of the biographers of Ashoka, because this is a time where a lot of biographies of Ashoka are emerging. One of the biographies or discovery of the India's last emperor was written by Charles Allen, who was a very profound scholar, wrote a couple of interesting books, and one of his last books was on Ashoka. The search of lost emperor, where he very, very, very claims something very interesting. He says that Ashoka is India's founding father. And if we do not understand this statement, I think we do not understand the idea of India. We cannot understand the vision of India. We cannot understand what we are supposed to do, where we are supposed to, go in terms of the source of these very fundamental ideas as to what constitute India. So, as I said, we will be only concentrating on historical Ashoka. We are not going to concentrate on legendary Ashoka. There is also an element of history, particularly in Mahavansa, Deepavansa, and Ashoka Vadan. The Sanskrit copy of Ashoka Vadan is lost, but it's still available in China. And there are, if we compare these two sources on Ashoka, we'll find a lot of discrepancies. But very interesting point to understand the ancient India. This work, Mahavansa, Deepavansa, and Ashoka Vadan, are very critical to understand Ashoka. But we are not going to concentrate on the legends or the mythologies or the stories which has no basis. We are only going to concentrate on historical Ashoka. A great historian, Robert Lingard, says this about Ashoka. He says there are in reality two Ashokas: the historical Ashok, whom we know through his inscriptions, and the legendary Ashok, who is known to us through texts of diverse origins in Pali, Sanskrit, Chinese, and Tibetan. So it is not that the material is not available on Ashoka. There is so much available on Ashoka in all different languages. And if we begin to study them, we can see that it becomes very interesting to understand Ashoka. Now, according to Patrick Olivelle, who has just published his biography of Ashoka, according to him, there are not two Ashokas, there are many Ashokas. So there is a historical Ashoka, there is legendary Ashoka, there is Ashoka as a writer, and there is Ashoka as a builder, because he built monuments. Many of them have lost. The city of Patliputra, his capital, is lying buried 6 to 8 feet under the present day city of Patna. So we hardly know. We know that it's there, but because it's such a popular city now, we cannot exhume it and find the what is lying beneath it. But of course, Ashoka was a builder. Ashoka was a philosopher, and we are going to look at that. He developed such a profound philosophy, and it's not some kind of philosophy that has been speculated by. We get his own words, and that's very interesting about Ashoka, that we listen to Ashoka through his own voice. And of course, he was a diplomat. He was somebody who launched diplomatic missions in terms of the countries where he wanted to spread Dhamma in terms of Dhamma Vijay. So this Ashoka, the multifaceted Ashoka, is very important for us to understand. And in these presentations, as I said, we are only going to focus on Ashoka's writings as handed down to us by his edicts, which are also known as Dhammalipi. He called all his edicts Dhammalipi. And good for us and good for the world, we have more than 4,600 words available, which are written by Ashoka. And they are written by Ashoka in such a way that even we can read today. 200 years back, we couldn't read what Ashoka wrote because what Ashoka wrote, it was in a different script, which was the mother script of all the Indian languages, but we couldn't understand what he wrote. But when the script was deciphered, everything started speaking. The history of India, the ancient India started speaking. Now, for example, today, the Indus Valley civilization is silent civilization because we cannot read anything because the script is not deciphered, and therefore we have no way to understand what happened in the Indus Valley civilization except we can interpret, speculate, so on and so forth. But in case of Ashoka, such is not the case. We have his direct words available to us, which we can even study today. They are not, they are not available in small quantity. They are available in terms, thousands of words, like 4,600 words. The scholars are still debating the number, but we can safely say that there are more than 4,600 words written by Ashoka. And his language is very magical. His language is very magical. And he says that, his language is like very sweet language. And he uses a word for his language called, he says that his language is madhurya, means sweet. So the language he uses is very sweet language. And he in fact says that, his language is very sweet. And the scholars have gone into the literary aspect of how Ashoka wrote, and the poetics of it, and the metrim, the metrics of it. People have gone into that, and they have brought very interesting facts about the writing skills of Ashoka, which is not our topic today. So I'm not going to look into that. What we are going to look today is, the Ashoka concerned with the idea of India. And then for us, it's very important to, just like we have Babasaheb Ambedkar's writing and speeches available to us to study directly. Likewise, we have Ashoka's own writings and speeches available to us, which we can study directly. And I think that's a very interesting point. Now, Ashoka, in terms of history, was a very interesting figure because he was the first emperor in the history of the world who has created a kind of an ideal welfare state. As Amartya Sen says, that Ashoka founded the first welfare state in the world. And we can say that Ashoka, in fact, developed a foundation of a nation state based on an idea of Dhamma. His core idea was the idea of Dhamma, which he traced so much in his edicts. And we know that out of 4,600 words that are available left behind by Ashoka, he has referred to Dhamma for 111 times. And we are going to look at that as to in what sense he has used the word Dhamma, because Dhamma was the cornerstone of his nation state, of his politics, of his governance. And this point is critical because when we are going to look at Babasaheb Ambedkar, we are also going to similarly look at his understanding of Dhamma and how that compares with understanding of Ashoka. So Ashoka is a watershed figure in the history of the world. Never before in the history of the world, an emperor emerged who governed such a vast area of land. And not by force, not by danda. And we know that the Brahminical system of governance is based on danda called Brahma Danda. But when we look at the Buddhist scheme of governance, it's always based on the wheel, the rule of law, the wheel of Dhamma. And that is what Ashoka, used to govern the huge empire. And how he governed it, we will be also looking at that. So Ashoka is the first Dhamma Raja. All these mythological characters like Yudhishthir as a Dhamma Raja or Rama or Krishna, whatever, now the historians have proved beyond doubt that this literature has emerged after Ashoka and in response to Ashoka, because Ashoka was the ideal ruler, and the scholars are saying that there is an absent ideal ruler in the Brahminical, literature who is often, is conspicuous of his absence, and that's Ashoka. The scholars also say that the dialogue between Arjuna and Krishna is a parody on Ashoka, because Ashoka left fighting the war, and his governance was totally based on altogether different sort of philosophy, which we are going to look into. So Ashoka is the first Dhammaraja, and we have a direct evidence of that. We know that there is a stupa in Pakistan, which is called the Dhammarajika stupa, and it's Ashokan stupa. It's still there. We can go there and visit the Dhammarajika stupa. In Buddhism, Dhamma has many meanings. It's a multivariant word. It doesn't have just one meaning. It has many meanings. And Ashoka used Dhamma in Prakrit. He used Magadhan Prakrit to write his edicts. He also used his inscriptions in Greek, where he defines the Dhamma in terms of what is called the piety or respect for gods, kings, and parents. And he also left behind one inscription, which is written in Aramaic, where he refers to Dhamma as very strange word QSYT, which means truth. So for Ashoka, Dhamma meant different things. It doesn't mean just one single thing. Just like the Buddha, if we look at the Tipitaka, the Dhamma has several connotations. Sometimes it's an object of mind, sometimes it's the truth, sometimes it is the Buddha's Dhamma, Buddha's teaching. So it has multivariant meaning, as it were. So Ashoka used two scripts in the Indian subcontinent. And it's very important for us to understand, the scripts of Ashoka, particularly Dhammalipi, because it is now argued that Ashoka might have himself, created the script in order to spread his message of peace and harmony. He also wrote in Kharoshti, which was in existence then, but Kharoshti did not survive, while Dhammalipi evolved into all the major scripts of India today, all. From north to south, east to west, all the scripts of India trace their origin in Dhammalipi. So just by way of giving you certain ideas about, Ashoka Jambudvipa, the geographical area, I'm going to show you a map. You can see the extent of the rule of Ashoka. And, Babasaheb's modern India, we know the map, and contemporary India is same thing. But in terms of the population, the scholars have speculated that and guess estimated that the population of the Indian subcontinent, or what Ashoka called Jambudvip, might be 15 to 20 million. So that was the population that time when Ashoka was ruling this Jambudvipa. It's very less, 15 to 20 million. At the time of Babasaheb Ambedkar India's independence, the population of India was mere 230 million. And now see, India's population is huge. It's 1.5 billion, as they say. And ethnicities, Ashoka's empire was very diverse. There were many tribal groups. There were a lot of linguist groups. There were a lot of religious groups. There were a lot of cultural entities. So in terms of diversity, Ashoka's India was not different. In terms of, Babasaheb's time, 6,000 caste, sorry, there is a, misspelling, 6,000 caste, and, great divisions in the country. And today we see our country divided and totally polarized on the religious line, on the caste line, and so on and so forth. Now, I added one element here, foreign policy. Ashoka's foreign policy was based on welfare diplomacy. Very interesting policy. Because that time, in India, particularly the Buddhist Sangha, was known by the medical services. Their medical technology, as it were, of the time was so advanced that people looked at the Buddhist Sangha as a model for, medical sort of treatment and so on and so forth. So they went to the Buddhist Sanghas and, they tried to, and very interesting papers have come up on that as to how hygiene, health was the mainstay of the Buddhist Sangha. So Ashoka has, in the southern states where he was not ruling, through the diplomacy, he launched what is called the medical missions there. Very interesting idea. He launched medical missions. He gave the medicinal plants to the southern states and, in the northwest. So it's a very interesting idea that how his foreign policy was not based on war. His policy was based on the Dhamma, and he always believed in Dhamma Vijay. And this particular word, Dhamma Vijay, appears in his edicts. Now, when India got freedom, or even our constitution was written, we chose to remain non-aligned. Today, our what is called the foreign policy is very speculative. Religions, few religions and philosophical system, but they were there. As we can see that Ashoka's grandfather was Jain, his father Bindusara was Ajivika, and Ashoka himself became Buddha. Today, India is the home of all the world religions plus local religious traditions, and the same goes on. Why I am bringing these things to the fore? Because I think they are very important as a background to launch into the discussion which we are going to have in the second seminar when we are going to talk about Babasaheb Ambedkar, his ideas of governance and Dhamma. So I just put these facts up here to give you an idea as to how we are going to approach the things. So this is the map that I was going to show you. You can look at the extent of Ashoka's empire, and you see that his edicts, his rock edicts, his pillar edicts are scattered all over the places. And the location of the pillars and the rock edicts itself is very interesting study, which is done by a very famous archaeologist and historian, Henry Falk, who has devoted his total life to it. And he has documented more than 150 sites associated with what we call the Ashokan sites, 150 sites. He has gone there personally, documented them, and it's a very important document to understand Ashoka. So this is the extent of Ashokan Empire. You see, as far as Afghanistan, all the way up to the part of present-day Bangladesh, and of course the Himalayan, and then the south part didn't belong to Ashokan Empire, but he has a very good diplomatic relationship with Sri Lanka, with the southern rulers. Now, how Ashoka developed this idea of India, and we will have some discussion on that. Before Ashoka, we don't see any script. Some of the scholars are saying that we see the Brahmi script, what they call it Brahmi script, but actually it's a Dhamma Lipi, it's a Ashokan script. So some potsherds have these alphabets of Ashokan Lipi, and which is considered to be predating the Ashoka, but we do not have much more substantial evidences for that. So a lot of scholars are saying that Ashoka might have developed this script, and the development of the script is very important for any idea of an imagined community to come into being. A nation is an imagined community, as we see from the study of Anderson. And so you see, you go anywhere in India except northwest part of India, there was a singular script. Even the southern languages were written in the Ashokan script. And if we go to South India, there are inscriptions which are written in the Ashokan, and there are a few change of alphabets here and there, but basically it's the same script. So we can see that the Emperor Ashoka constituted India through his large scale spread of what we can say the script. And there is a very interesting book which has come up recently about China, the Republic of Scripts, because the Chinese script is very interesting, and how the idea of China was linked with the idea of the script which went on developing. But we are not going to go into the technicality of that. Suffice here to keep in mind that Ashoka developed a script through which he could spread his message, through which he could spread his policies, which can be communicated across the vast empire that he was ruling. Of course, the language, the Magadhan Prakrit, as it is said, was the language, lingua franca of the country. It was the official language. And we see the same language appearing in all the places. Even in the Kharoshti, the language is the Magadhan Prakrit. That's a very interesting point. Even in Kharoshti script, the language is the what is called the Magadhan Prakrit. That very interesting research has now come up that in Pakistan or that part of the Indian subcontinent, they have discovered actually the extant manuscript, which are very old, but written in the Magadhan Prakrit. The language is Magadhan Prakrit, but the script is Kharoshti. Very interesting things are now coming up. Now, one of the way by which Ashoka constructed the idea of India is what people call, or the scholars called, his idea of civil religion. He didn't force his ideas of religion. on others. And we are going to see how meticulously he did that, how meticulously he tried to orient all religious groups towards the truth, towards the inquiry of truth, towards mutual harmonious discussions. And one of the ways by which he realized the great empire, the idea of the imagined community, through a very interesting phenomena called decentralized Dhamma bureaucracy. He appointed special officers, and we can get a glimpse of how he ruled this great expanse of land that he was emperor of. Very interesting study and very insightful ideas there, because that time the communication was not so fast, communication was so slow, and people have to, the message will take a long time to travel from one place to another. So you cannot rule from some kind of a central place. You have to have a decentralized bureaucracy, and that's what Ashoka had, the decentralized bureaucracy. So let's look at the Ashoka's philosophy of Dhamma. As I said, that Ashoka had this idea of Jambudip or India based on the very foundation of the Dhamma. And it's very important for us to understand the idea of India in terms of Ashoka's philosophy of Dhamma. Now, see, the first point is very interesting. What he says, Savva Nikayesu. Nikayesu means group. So he says Dhamma is not exclusively meant for one group. Dhamma is for all. So that means that the Dhamma is universal. Dhamma is for all the groups. Sabba Nikayesu. For all the groups. He doesn't exclude any group from his conception of the Dhamma. And I think that's a very, very interesting point if we take into consideration. I think this is the most important point, that his idea of Dhamma was not sectarian, which was not limited to one particular group or two particular groups. According to him, the Dhamma can be found in all the sects with proper inquiry. But he has this proviso. He says that the Buddha's Dhamma is Saddhamma. It is the true Dhamma. That's what he says. He uses the word Saddhamma only one time in Berat inscription that is found in Rajasthan. And we will be looking at that particular text, go through it a little bit. And then in the subsequent seminars, sessions, I'm going to go at length into that. His idea of Dhamma was the idea of universal ethics, which included, you see, the rule of law. Now, when we talk about the rule of law, we talk about the Dicey of England, and we say that the rule of law came from him. But if you look at the Ashokan inscription, there is the rule of law. Now, what does it mean? He says that there has to be uniformity in legal procedures and in punishment. You cannot punish the people arbitrarily. You cannot have, different laws for different people. This is a very interesting point. Same law for everybody. And we know that subsequently when Ashoka's ideas were attacked by the Brahmanical scriptures, the idea of the rule of law was gone for a toss. Okay. Now, the second idea is no one should be submitted to unjust imprisonment or torture without reason. You see, this is a very modern idea, due process of law. Without due process of law, we cannot punish anybody. That's, the procedure established by law. Due process of law is so critical. It's the heart of the Indian Constitution. And the third important point about Ashoka's Dhamma is this, that this is good. If this is good, this ought to be done. If something is helpful to the humanity, that has to be done. It's not that something has to be done because it benefits one class of people or another class of people. If it is good for all, it has to be done. I think that's a very broad sort of an understanding of what Ashoka's philosophy of Dhamma constituted. And this is not speculative. What I'm telling you is not speculative. It's all there in the 4,600 words that Ashoka left behind, which we can read today, and even in the future people can read it. So you see, this is a very interesting idea in terms of Ashoka's philosophy of Dhamma, and he has gone ahead qualifying what constitute the Dhamma. He had a strong disliking for the rituals. He was very critical of the useless rites. He said the only rites which are useful are the Dhamma Mangala. He used the word Dhamma Mangala, where you respect the parents, where you help others, where you help the lower, the low classes, and so on and so forth. So for him, the Dhamma constitutes not in the rituals. The Dhamma Mangal lies in the Mangal of the people. He was, of course, the strong advocate of ahimsa, so much so that he felt so much remorse that I think Richard Solomon says that he's the first emperor in the world who had this guts to say sorry. After the Kalinga War, he regretted so much that he publicly apologized. I think never ever in the history of the world such a powerful man has admitted his mistake and said sorry. That's the greatness of Ashoka. Now, Ashok used the word Dhamma in the sense of the first term, like Dhamma Mangala, Dhamma Vijaya, uh, Dhamma Ruddhi means the increase in the Dhamma, and he uses the word Dhamma in the sense of the first term. While if you look at the Brahminical text, you say Raja Dhamma, Kula Dhamma, Jati Dhamma, Varnashrama Dharma. They are all used as a second term. That's a very interesting point there. So another interesting point when we are looking at the Ashoka's philosophy of Dhamma is Dhamma as a meditational self-inquiry. In fact, Ashoka goes on defining what are the mental states which are not beneficial for the welfare of the society. Envy, jealousy, hatred. So the scholars are saying that he is bringing up the deep studies of the Abhidhamma in play here when he's talking or describing Dhamma as a meditational self-inquiry. Another aspect of his Dhamma is the immense love for the Dhamma. And this is very interesting. He sort of commits his immense love for the Dhamma, just like Babasaheb Ambedkar, isn't it? Like I can, remove the name of Ashoka and talk about all these things in terms of Babasaheb Ambedkar, but that's for the second session. He had immense love for the Dhamma. And what is Dhamma? Four interesting word, very interesting word. Daya, compassion. One has to have compassion. Dana, no attachment, giving whatever one can. And Ashoka is a prime example of giving everything for the welfare of humanity. It's a very interesting point. Satya means the truth. The Dhamma constituting truth. And Sochaya, very interesting word, purity of mind. These are all things you can trace, look into the Buddha and his Dhamma in the writing and speeches of Babasaheb. So when we are looking at Ashoka's writings, I don't find them much different from Babasaheb Ambedkar's writing and speeches, which we are going to discuss later. And according to Ashoka, the progress of Dhamma can be achieved through Dhamma Niyamena, means the rule of Dhamma. That's how you can achieve what is called the the progress, Dhammaruddhi. He uses the word Dhammaruddhi. You see, it's very interesting to read. It's very sweet. The language that Ashoka uses, every word that he uses is so sweet. And he qualifies this sweetness in terms of a very famous, popular Indian word, Madhurya. It's very juicy, it's very sweet. And that, this word, look at this word, Dhamma Vriddhi, Dhamma Niyamena, and Nijatiya by meditation. This word is little bit controversial. Some of the scholars are saying that the Nijatiya means meditation. Now, not that all scholars will agree with everything, because that's a very old languages, but we come very close to what Ashoka exactly might have said. Because we can find the contextual meaning, and we have the whole background of the Tripitaka to make sense of Ashokan's scriptures, Ashoka's writings. We have the whole background of the Tripitaka. So it is not that it's speculative or whatever. Now, wisdom and compassion was very critical in Ashokan thinking. Ashoka was a great thinker, a great writer, a great philosopher, a great king, and like Babasaheb Ambedkar, his thinking was always steeped in prajna and karuna, wisdom and compassion. So he uses a very interesting word here, which should be of interest to us, gift of insight. And the word here is chakkudana. Now we know that, in the Buddhist scheme of understanding, we don't believe anything unless we have seen it. Now that seeing happens on different level. That seeing happens at intellectual level, that seeing happens at mere physical level, or so there are different ways by which the chakku is defined. But the use of the word is chakku very important, because it means the gift of insight. Chakku dana means making people think, making people understand the things for themselves. That's the gift of insight. And the very interesting word in Hindi or other languages, dekho. You find the same word in the Ashokan scriptures. Dekh means look at it, see, just like the Buddha would say, just like Babasaheb would say, just look at it for yourself. Don't look at it from the from the conditioning of society and so on and so forth. The gift of life for every sentient being. This is another very important hallmark of the thinking of Ashoka. Develop all philosophies clearly. Now, if somebody is advocating some philosophy, Ashoka encourages them. He doesn't discourage them. He encourages them to develop the philosophies clearly and then meet and discuss philosophies with different groups. I qualify it as a deliberative process. Deliberation is a very interesting, important part of democracy. Without deliberation, without communication, the democracy cannot exist. So this is a very key principle of Ashoka's thinking. He encourages all the philosophies to develop clearly, articulate it clearly. If you are saying something, Ashoka would not reject it. He would say, articulate it very clearly. Then you discuss the philosophies with different groups, come to an argument, come to a consensus. This is a deliberative process which is very critical to create any democratic society. Now, ethics as the true foundation of society. As I said, that Ashoka has founded his Ashokan empire based on the foundation of ethics, the Dhamma. And according to Ashoka, ethics is the true foundation of society. Very interestingly, equal opportunities for all. He talks about the high and low. And very interestingly, he goes in the favor of low people. He doesn't favor the high people. He doesn't reject them. He says that the Dhamma is for all, but his liking is for the low people. And I touched upon it a bit, but it's worth repeating. Diplomacy based on Dhamma and not force. Rule of law, delegation of power. And this is a very interesting word. Ashoka never uses the word like Nibbana. His Dhamma is very much grounded. His Dhamma is very much practical. It doesn't talk about the karma or it doesn't talk about Nibbana. But I have tried to put it in terms of, what we can term it as a Nibbanic democracy, where the individuals can be free, where the individuals can be free to be what they can be. Now, Ashoka has spoken a lot. We can still listen to him, his exact words. But there are some points where the Ashoka's silence is very intriguing. Very intriguing. And Ashoka has not written anything on Varna. And the scholars are saying that Ashoka, at the time of Ashoka, the Varnashrama Dharma didn't exist at all. Very interesting point, because when his grandfather discusses the scheme of Indian society, he doesn't talk about Varna. He talks about the sevenfold classification of Indians. Very interesting point. So Ashoka, in the Ashokan scriptures, inscription, there is no mention of any Varna. There is no mention of rebirth and karma. Very interesting. There is no mention of the Grahastha as a category, which Vedic category, which came to become such an important category for the Vedism in the history. But there is nothing about that in Ashoka's inscriptions. And the concept of Dvija doesn't exist in the Ashokan inscription. So you can see that, as the scholars are saying, that Ashoka is the watershed in the history of the world, in the history of the Indian subcontinent. And after that, everything started building up. So Ashoka is a pivotal point. As I said, Ramayana, Mahabharata, or Manu, Smriti, whatever there are, they have this invisible, Ashoka dominating all these things. All their arguments, counter arguments are directed at something which is visible, that is invisible. As I said, that the Gita is a parody on Ashoka. The Krishna is encouraging Arjuna to fight, to launch a war. While we know that in the history, Ashoka has laid down his arms. But it doesn't mean that Ashoka was not using force. Ashoka has in fact threatened the unruly classes of the people to behave, to get more civilized, so that the trade and commerce can flourish. So it's not that Ashoka was not immune from use of violence, use of force. I wouldn't say violence, use of force. But the use of force was not the mainstay of the Ashokan governance. His mainstay of the governance was Dhamma. So I thought that this point, which is made by Professor Patrick Olivelle in terms of Ashoka's silence, is very important for us to understand, because these we can judge a lot of things by not only by being of what is present, but we can also understand a lot of things by understanding what is absent. So there is a total absence of any reference to Varna. There is total absence of any reference to rebirth or karma. There is no reference of grasta as the Vedic category, and there is no concept of dvija in the writings of Ashoka. Is very interesting point. Now, these two words, which are so popular in Indian languages today, and Ashoka uses them like anything. First of all, the word parakrama. Parakram doesn't mean only the victory, because this parakram word is used by Ashoka. He also used the word utthan. These two words are very critical. So upliftment and striving are critical to Ashoka. It is not that you just philosophize. Ashoka is not an armchair philosopher. If you look at the biography of Ashoka, he was always striving. He even said that you can disturb Ashoka anytime. If there is any urgent matter, you can even disturb Ashoka in his bedroom. Such was he, who had such a inclination towards Utthan and Parakram. And Parakram word is very critical in the Buddhist scriptures. It means striving, it means uplifting, it means going forth, it means, having courage. So these two words, Utthan and Parakram, are very important. And I'm going to summarize Ashokan principles which are needed today in terms of, Ashokan principles are needed today when the politics is so much governed by talks and no action. We are all, can be said that we talk a lot, but when it comes to action, we have little action. Even if it is governed by action, that action is sporadic. It is not steady or sustained. Even if it is steady, it is done in haste. And anything done in haste is unmindful. And that brings us to third principle of Ashokan tools to transform society: inculcate thinking, spread education, and let people think for themselves. So the three principles that which we can derive from Ashoka's principles are: one, harmony is the best. And he says sadhu evam samavaya. Harmony is best, auspicious, sadhu. He uses the word sadhu, very beautiful Buddhist word. Steady action without haste. He says that, the action has to be steady, but it has to be done with mindfulness, with complete understanding. And Ashoka, of course, encourages the culture of thinking. Now, I'm going to, come to the end of my presentation, and we are going to open up for the discussion. Ashoka uses the word Saddhamma only one time in the Rajasthan scripture inscription, which is found there. And this is a very interesting edict. Here he is talking to the Buddhist monks. The emperor, he's talking to the Buddhist monks. He talks to the population. He talks to his ministers through his edicts. He talks to the different kings through his edicts. And in this particular edict, he's talking to the Buddhist monks. And he very interestingly saying, and I'm going to read it: King Priyadarshi of Magadha, having saluted the Sangha, wishes them good health and happy living. It is known to you, O reverend sirs, how great is my reverence for and faith in the Buddha, Dhamma, and Sangha. Whatever, reverend sir, is said by blessed Buddha is well said. This is very, very interesting. Whatever is said by the Buddha is well said. And whatever is well said is said by the Buddha. This is another aspect of it. Whatever is the well said in the world, you can take it as the words of the Buddha. Eight reverend sirs, I may point out thinking thus, the good Dhamma will endure forever. I am entitled to do so. These are, O reverend sir, the text of the Dhamma. So Ashoka is talking about the texts. And we know that there are a lot of suttas in the Buddhist scriptures, but Ashoka has talked about these 7 texts. And no two scholars have agreed upon this, where they are located in the Tripitaka. Only 3 or 4 texts have been identified. But we can have the very thoughtful guess as to which sutra that can be. So he has talked about Vinaya Sammukasa, According to some scholars, it's about Dhammachakra Pravartana Sutra, the very first sutra that the Buddha taught. Some people say that it's about Vinaya par excellence. Then there is Ariyavasa, noble living, how one should live the highest life. And there is Anagata Bhaya, fears in the future. There is a Muni Gatha, Gatha of Muni, which is about the Buddha, how you can remain, live like the Buddha. Moniya Sutta, Sutta on Muni. Upatissa Prashna. This is the Sariputta's question. This identified. And Rahulovada Sutra. Now, to come to something very interesting is Babasaheb Ambedkar has referred to these two suttas, the Sariputra Prashna and Rahulovada Sutra in the Buddha and Dhamma. But today we are focusing on this very interesting aspect of Ashoka, and that's referred to some Buddhist texts, and some scholars have identified it, and we can go into that. And maybe in the next session, I'm going to go into these texts a little bit to give us a background as to how we can then start looking at Babasaheb Ambedkar from the Ashokan's perspective, Ashoka from Babasaheb perspective, and then bring it all together as to how we can find a way to make sense of the idea of India, what India we need, whether we need the Indian polity based on Ashoka Dhamma or Manu Dhamma. That's a critical question. We know today that the modern India, at least politically, at least theoretically, at least constitutionally, is constituted on the ideas of Ashoka. We have Ashokan wheel of law, not the Brahmadanda, on the Indian flag. We have the royal emblem, like the four lions roaring the Dhamma in four directions as a royal emblem of a country. We have written behind the President of India, Dhammachakra Pravartana, and we have the Constitution, which, according to Babasaheb Ambedkar, the foundational principles of our Constitution: liberty, equality, fraternity, and of course, justice. Ashoka is a great example of justice. I'm going to touch upon that in the coming session. And these are the values, as according to Babasaheb Ambedkar, are not taken from the French Revolution, but from his teacher, the Buddha, and who realized the ideal of Buddha in such a vast length and breadth of the Indian subcontinent and the world. The world was affected by Ashoka so much that the rulers in China, the rulers in Thailand, the rulers in Japan modeled themselves on the lines of Ashoka. And Harshavardhan, emulated Ashoka. The kings after kings tried to emulate, tried to imitate the great Ashoka. So Ashoka is like, as H.G. Wells says, never before in the history of the world such an emperor existed, whose name shines like a sole star in the universe. So I think today I have given you something to think about. And the last slide is we have to go beyond symbolism. Like, we have these beautiful symbols everywhere in this country, but we have to go towards the real Ashokan philosophy, to Ashoka's principles, and more importantly, Ashoka's vision of having the enlightened Jambudvipa. And when we talk about Dr. Babasaheb Ambedkar, we can think of him as Ashoka in the contemporary world. So the idea of Dhamma, on which Ashoka's policy, Ashoka's nation state was developed, that was attacked by the idea of Varnashrama Dharma, Raja Dharma, Kula Dharma, and other sort of dharmas which are brought into play through various Brahminical texts. And Professor Alf Hiltebettel has written a wonderful book on the idea of Dharma in Buddhism and in Vedic scriptures. A very illuminating book that I recommend all of you to study. And when it came to the modern India, we have our great history, which is embodied by Babasaheb Ambedkar, exemplifying the ideal, the philosophy, the principles, and the mechanisms of Ashoka. So I will stop here for today, and we will open up our first session of the seminar for any discussion, any comments. Okay? I think, can you unmute yourself?
Yes.
Okay. You can make any comments, raise any questions, any discussion. Because this is an open forum. I wanted to make it very open. Yes. So Pritam, you raised your hand. What's your question or discussion? Anything you want to discuss, comment on?
Jab, thanks for this insightful session, and it was really mind blowing, I would say. So I have got a question. So many people say that Ashoka embraced Dhamma after the Kalinga War,
Right.
and he wasn't born a Buddhist.
Hmm.
So how much truth is in this context or in this argument or opinion?
Right. See, as I said that there are these inscriptional evidences and there are the evidences left by Mahavansa, Deepavansa and Ashokavadan. Ashokavadan was a Sanskrit Buddhist text, hybrid Sanskrit Buddhist text, which survives in Chinese language today. And we can by definitely know that Ashoka was, in the awe of Dhamma before he became, he committed to the Triple Gems. Because we have evidences where we can see that his wife, Vidisha, Devi, her name was Devi, who was from Vidisha, and the whole center of Sanchi, and then Mahendra and Sangamitra, they were all residents of Vidisha. And there is a written evidence which Ashoka left in a place called Sarumaru, near Bhopal, on the way to Nagpur, where Ashoka has left an inscription where he says that I have come here with my unwedded wife, means a girlfriend, on an excursion. So that's the first inscription. And then there is a very sophisticated inscription where Ashoka talks about the harmony of the society. It is a very sophisticated, you can make out that it's written by a skillful hand. And the first where he says that I came here with my unwedded wife is written in a very shabby sort of handwriting. So Ashoka knew Buddhism. He was in the awe of Buddhism. He was as if, his wife Devi, whom was from Vidisha, one of the wives, where Devi, she was a Buddhist, very staunch Buddhist. She played her role. They said Upagupta played the role. In Ashokavadan, they said Nigrodha played. So, there are all these stories and all. But it was, of course, Kalinga War that created deep sense of remorse in the mind of Ashoka. And that was a turning point, I would say, not only in the life of Ashoka, but in the history of the world. And I said he apologized for that.
Yeah.
So
Ashoka grown in the Buddhist, Buddhist culture.
Yeah, he was growing the Buddhist background. There was Buddhism everywhere for sure.
Yeah.
But he became committed. Some of us are growing in the Buddhist background, but it's not that we are nominal Buddhist, but sometimes something struck us so much that we cannot but completely surrender ourselves to the Triple Gems, right?
Yeah, that's true. And his father was also Buddhist, right?
They say that, Bindusara has inclinations towards Ajivika. Ajivika was one of the state. He was one of the religious sects. Just like his grandfather, Chandragupta Maurya, was a Jain. Right?
Yeah.
So it was a very fluid. They are Shramnik religions, right?
Yeah.
They were the Shramnik systems of, philosophies. They were not Brahminical system of philosophies.
And do you have any evidence, do you have any inscription of Ashoka in Jharkhand? Because I belong to Jharkhand, so I want to know if there is any.
And I have not come across, but that's an interesting point. I showed you a map before, and I will send it I will send the whole presentation to you all.
Yeah, thank you.
There are 150 sites now identified by Henry Fox throughout India. Okay, Pritam, nice.
Thank you.
Anybody else?
Sir, there are some questions on the chat box.
Chat box. Let me look into chat box. Jai Bhim. Okay. Jai Bhim to everyone. Yes, please. I am not getting any question. Can you read for? Okay. It's better to ask question like this, no? It is often said that women were not allowed in the Sangha, be it of Buddhas or Ashokas, sir. How far is this true and what is your take on it? Right. It is said that Ashoka said very less on women, but we find this word women 4 times, 4 different words for women in the Ashokan scriptures. And Ashoka, of course, has appointed a special minister for the welfare of women. That's on the record. And Ashoka also talks about the fourfold Sangha, Bhikshuni Sangha. Today, the Bhikshuni Sangha is not there, but at the time of Ashoka, there definitely was a Bhikshuni Sangha. So, of course, the women were allowed by the Buddha himself. And after the great march of Mahaprajapati with 500 women, Shakyan women, and we know that there were a lot of enlightened women that time. So, I'm sure, Devi, Ashoka's wife herself, was such a devoted Buddhist woman, and her son Mahendra was a monk, her daughter Sangamitra was a nun. So, I think they were very open society that time. Right, Siddhanti? Is that okay? Okay. Can you highlight the similarities and difference between the Western concept of functioning of modern democracy institute with Ashokan idea of India?
Hello.
1 minute, Rangariji. Can you highlight the similarities and differences between the Western concept of function? Yes, of course. As Babasaheb Ambedkar says that India was not unknown to the parliamentary democracy, and there was of course parliamentary democracy in the Sangha. There were a Sangha republic, like the Shakyan, Koliya. They were all republic, and there was the concept of voting. There was a concept of majority. There was a concept of resolution of disputes through deliberation. So yes, India was not immune to the concept of democracy. And there are a lot of different concepts of democracy. I think that's not the time to go into that. Maybe we will go in the next session. Difference between vision and eyesight according to Buddha. You see, the word drishti is very important. The word chakshu is very important. And we have seen that in the Ashokan scheme, chakhudan, giving the gift of the vision, is very important. To make other people see as it is important. So I think this vision is not the physical eye. He's not referring to the physical eye. He's referring to the wisdom eye, the Pradnya Chakshu. He's referring to the Dhamma eye, the Dhamma Chakshu. He's referring to the Buddha Chakshu. He's referring to the Divya Chakshu. Okay, so he's talking about seeing in a very deeper sense, in almost a scientific sense. Okay, I think these written questions are finished. So let's go for Anil Rangari ji.
हाँ मंगे जी, जय भीम।
जय भीम जी, जय भीम।
मेरे को एक पूछना था। ये सम्राट अशोक के जो शिलालेख लिखे हैं स्तंभ वगैरह, तो उसमें किसी भी शिलालेख में अशोक शब्द का उपयोग किया गया है क्या?
हाँ, अशोक शब्द का यूज है
ना, प्रियदर्शी वगैरह को ठीक मिलता है, लेकिन
अशोक शब्द का भी रेफरेंस मिला है, मस्की में मिला है। और ये मतलब मेरी जो किताब है मेरे पास, उसमें तो मैं आपको अशोक शब्द भी दिखा सकता हूँ। एक मिनट, अगर आप
शिलालेख में जो
शिलालेख में
जो लिखा है
अशोक शब्द है, तो आप देखो, ये
धम्मलिपि वाली में है क्या? धम्मलिपि में?
हाँ, धम्मलिपि में है। ये देखो अशोक दिखा।
अच्छा,
अशोक।
अच्छा, वो आर्मेक भाषा वगैरह में उसमें नहीं ना? आर्मेक लिपि या खरोष्ठी में?
नहीं, इसमें धम्मलिपि में,
उसमें नहीं, धम्मलिपि में। अच्छा, इसको आप व्हाट्सएप में डालेंगे क्या? व्हाट्सएप या फेसबुक में अपने?
हाँ, डाल दूंगा, मैं डाल दूंगा जी।
इसका फोटो डाल दीजिएगा, क्योंकि उसमें थोड़ा सा प्रूफ के लिए चाहिए था वो।
हाँ,
अशोक शब्द का उपयोग किया करके, क्योंकि
सारे
प्रियदर्शी वगैरह शब्द मिल जाते हैं, लेकिन ये शब्द नहीं मिल रहा है कहीं।
अशोक मिला, अशोक शब्द मिला।
ठीक है, उसको डाल दीजिए किसी
अशोक लाजा अशोक शब्द मिला, लाजा अशोक।
हाँ, ठीक है, चलेगा।
ठीक है। हाँ,
शब्द मिलना जरूरी है जी। ओके, थैंक्स।
Okay, Vikas Kumar ji is asking what is Magadha Prakriti. See, that time India was basically, the middle kingdom was considered to be Magadha. Magadha was India, the largest concentration of population out of maybe 20 million population of the Jambu Dvipa. The majority of the population was in Magadha. And Magadha was a very advanced civilization because of the Ganges river. And Magadhan Pali, there are different, one word has a different, these things. So this particular word, Magadhan Pali, is a Pali spoken at the time of Ashoka there. But there is one interesting thing that has come to now front is Buddha might have himself created this language Pali. Because there were several, as we know that, that there are so many dialects. And in order to communicate across such a vast land, you need a unifying language. Like, for example, there is Audhi, Maithili, Bhojpuri, all these language. So you have a meta language Hindi, which can communicate to everybody. So some of the scholars are saying that Buddha himself might have created the Pali language. So Vikas Kumar, is that okay? Okay. Anybody has got anything to say? It's not just that you ask questions. You can also comment. You can also make your points.
Jai Bhim.
Jai Bhim, Shivaji.
Uh, I have some curiosity about this
Yes.
state of Bihar.
Yes.
I have a feeling that this word Bihar should have come from Vihar.
Yes. Definitely. Yes. The word Bihar has come from Bihar.
Okay.
Yes.
I
Just
think,
like, they say the word for Tibet is Bhot, Sambhot. So it actually Sambodhi.
Sambodhi.
Bhutan word is actually, it's the word of the Buddha. So, these countries were so much devoted to the Buddha that they changed the names of the countries like that. So Bihar, of course, Bihar comes from Bihar.
Okay, I think that truth is to be spread now. The people should be made know that it is Bihar, actually is not Bihar.
Yes.
Buddhist Bihar.
True.
Thank you. Jai Bhim.
Welcome, Shivarudraji. Okay, Pritam, once again, come on, you can ask or comment.
Yeah, I have got a bunch of interesting questions about Ashoka
Yeah.
and some so there is one question. It come in my mind often. So they say that Chanakya was guru of Samrat, like his grandfather. So why King Ashoka haven't mentioned his name in his edicts
See,
ever?
now the new scholarship is saying that Kautilya's Arthashastra is written after Ashoka.
So we can say that he's like he
So
wasn't
Kautilya is
he wasn't a
very elusive figure.
Yeah.
Whether it's Vishnugupta, Chanakya, or Kautilya, very ambiguous. Nobody can.
So he was not clearly a historical figure.
He is not clearly a historical figure.
Okay.
Uh,
And there is a one question. So in Kashmir there is a Sarada Pit, and now it is like it is a kind of temple right now, but it was a Buddhist university. So can you tell me about what was the contribution in education and in universities of Ashoka, and especially in Kashmir and North India?
See, actually, I cannot say for sure what was the educational system at the time of Ashoka, because the Buddhist vihars were definitely the center of education that time, and they were open to all. And they had very higher education in terms of, just to put one fact across, the first documented use of Shunya is found in the Buddhist monastery, Bakshali, a place in Pakistan. So, it's very, interesting to see as to how the network of vihars was developed into the university scheme like Nalanda. Nalanda didn't exist at the time of Ashoka, but they say that the Takshila existed at the time of Ashoka, Buddha also, and Ashoka as well, because Jivak was a student of Takshila, and Ashoka was the governor of Takshila, so he definitely was, associated or related to Takshila for some time. The point here is we don't know the educational system of Ashoka, but we know for sure that there was a definite educational institutional structure in terms of Vihar and Mahavihar and the big universities, and they were all connected, and they were patronized by different kings, and they sent the students from here to there and there to here. So, it was a very vibrant sort of educational system. This before, this Oxford came into being. The world-class university was Nalanda, of course. Odantapuri, Vikramshila, Takshila, they were all top-class universities. I'm sure the Kashmir, what you call Sharda Peeth, must be a very top-class university, because the Kashmir that we see today is a very small Kashmir. There's a greater Kashmir, which is now the part of
Yeah.
China and Pakistan. So Kashmir is a bigger reality. It's not just a small reality there. And Kashmir was at one point of time was totally under the influence of Buddhism, and a lot of scholars emerged from Kashmir. So definitely there was an educational system. There was the Chinese came for that to India. People from Greece came for that to India. So I'm not sure. I cannot say about one institution as such, and I don't know the syllabus of it definitely, but I know for sure that there was an educational system. It was open to all, and there was a higher education as well, not just Buddhist education.
Yeah, cool. So anyone can be teacher and anyone could be a student of
Yeah,
any university
anybody.
that time.
There was no restriction.
Cool. And there is one question like,
I think if other people have, can you hold on, Pritam, for some time and then you can
yeah,
come back?
sure.
Any other than our brother here? Pranay?
Uh,
Jai Bhim, sir. Dr. Vijayashree speaking.
Vijayashree, yes.
Sir, Jai Bhim to all. And one question is, sir, what was the religion during Ashoka's time?
See, Ashoka didn't use the word religion. That time there was no concept of religion as such. The word he used was Pashanda or Pasandas. And there were many Pasandas. He used the word Samana Brahmana, but they were sort of a religious community, because the word from today's perspective, the word religion is very confusing, because the word religion has come now in modern times. That time there were the various system, philosophical traditions and system.
So whether it was a Vedic system at that time?
No. At that time in Magadha there was no stronghold of Vedism. It was all shamanism.
Okay, sir. Thank you, sir.
Yes, Pranay.
Jai Bhim, everyone. First of all, thank you, sir, for this insightful talk. I just wanted to ask that at present, is there amongst the Buddhists in India, is there a tradition of sort of celebrating, for instance, on Ashoka Vijayadashami, that's a celebration that the Buddhists in India are having. Apart from that, like the edicts that we have about Ashoka and the sites of Ashokas, as you mentioned, as you showed in the map also, are there any festivals or sort of ceremonies happening in there, or are they all just archaeological sites, limited to archaeological sites? And if not, if yes, if not, but like what kind of possibility do you see there, and what kind of restrictions do you see there? Thank you.
I think that's a very good point, Pranay. At this moment, there are only few sort of ceremonies, particularly in UP. They call it Lat Mahotsav. So Lat is, of course, the Ashoka Stamba. And some communities like Kushavas and Shakyas have started celebrating it as a Lat Mahotsav. Lat, Lat is like a pillar. So they have this thing. But it's not a popular sort of a thing. Ashoka himself was against the rites, but he had this rites of Dhamma Mangala, where people will do good to the world, good to the parents, good to the people around them, good to the people, good to the poor people, good to the low people, and so on and so forth. So I think this is a time now to reawaken the spirit of Ashoka and celebrate the sites. Because as a matter of fact, Ashoka has given this country to the Buddha. So according to the ancient conception, the body of a human being constituted 84,000 atoms. And Ashoka divided the remains of Buddha into 84 different parts, and he erected stupas throughout his kingdom. Okay, so implication of that was this, that the Buddha has dedicated the Jambudvipa, the Ashoka has dedicated the Jambudvipa to the Buddha. So now after Ashoka is gone and now the Buddhism is reawakening in this country, it's our duty to celebrate the Ashokan sites. So like, for example, Pritam was saying whether there is any site in Jharkhand. So I think if it's identified, then the people of Jharkhand can go and celebrate. In Bihar, there are so many sites. In Maharashtra, there are so many. In Bengal, there are so many sites. In South India, there are so many sites. So I think the time has come now to celebrate, right? And they have found Ashokan Jayanti on 20th April or something. I don't know whether it's a real figure or fictitious figure. It doesn't matter whether it's fictitious figure, but it's time to celebrate Ashoka. Vijayadashmi. We hardly talk about Ashoka Vijayadashmi. So I think one of the aims of this seminar was to really bring Ashoka in the forefront and talk about him. Right, Pranay?
Thank you, sir. Yes, yes,
Let's do it more and more in the future.
Yes, sir, we should.
yes. Thank you.
Yeah. Anyone? Yes, Nawal? I think you can unmute yourself and you can raise a question. No problem.
Sir, can I speak, sir?
Yeah, yeah.
Sir, a great compliment that I today learned about Dhamma Mangal. I
Yes.
was not knowing much about this, sir. Thanks to you, sir.
Now, there are many words. Dhamma Vruddhi, the progress
Hmm.
in the Dhamma. Dhamma
Yes, sir.
Niyamena, Dhamma
Yes, sir.
Vijay. They are beautiful Ashokan words.
Yes, sir.
He used a beautiful language.
Yeah, really.
Nawal, do you want to go for your question or comment?
Sir,
Hey,
may,
Mangesh,
may I
can you,
ask? May I ask, please?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Please ask.
Sir, is there any relevance of Deepavali or Diwali with the Ashokas?
It's might be there, might not be there. We don't know. But we can create our mythologies, right? What
Right.
happened, if we do
Right.
not have any textual or any scriptural or any inscriptional evidence, but we can have our own interpretation of the things, right?
Right.
We cannot buy their interpretations as such. As we have seen our presentation, that guy is talking about the Hindu Rashtra just
Okay.
yesterday, isn't
Okay.
it?
Okay.
They have
Right.
their, but we the way we are looking at interpreting the idea of India, we have all the evidences. It's not mythology, is it?
Right.
Right or wrong, Hakendraji?
You are saying right, sir.
Okay.
hey, hi, Mangesh, can I ask you a
Yes, yes.
question?
Yes, please, Vivek.
Yeah. I had visited Dhauli, a place on the south towards Bhubaneswar,
It's a
and there's
beautiful
a
place.
beautiful rock inscription by Ashoka himself, as well as an elephant.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
So, two things that I wanted to point out.
Yeah.
One is, I remember reading it very perfectly, that there was a word called Shramanism, and
Hmm.
there's something called shamanism.
Hmm.
Now, Shramanism and shamanism are two
Hmm.
different words. So,
Yeah.
I would like to know what
Hmm.
are the differences. Secondly, this elephant, which has been extensively used by Ashoka,
Hmm. Hmm.
does that come into role in the Hinduism later on? Because if you visit the caves
Yeah.
in Aurangabad, I'm not sure. I visited the caves near Aurangabad,
Yeah, yeah,
not
yeah.
the Ajanta Narora,
Yeah,
but
yeah.
Aurangabad caves.
Hmm.
So it's just on the outskirts of the city.
Beautiful, beautiful.
So when I enter this cave, uh, the front, the first idol or the first carving that I see is of Ganesh, not
Yeah.
of Buddha. And
Yeah.
Buddha sits on the right, not on the primary thing. So I'm just trying to identify these things. Secondly, I mean, to the group I appeal, I am trying to write mythology or
Hmm.
create mythology.
Hmm.
So if somebody is willing, please feel to ping me up. I'll be happy to contribute.
Yeah,
I
yeah.
have written some things towards creating our mythologies.
Good, good,
So
good.
that's just you mentioned now that we need to create our own mythologies.
Very good, very good.
Very well said. It's high time that we create our own mythologies and these stories and fictions, because the common audience, they need these things, the songs, the dance, something, a form of celebration. So even these things we need to get into our discourse,
Right,
not
right.
just get into the
Hmm.
ritualistic mode or the spiritual mode, but
Right,
also
right.
the celebratory mode, because the youth, at a large, if I see, the youth gets disconnected at that age when
True.
they see glamour. No, it's wrong to use the word glamour, but that is the fact. Because the
I
adolescent
agree.
stage,
Yeah,
so we need to create those mythologies. We need to create,
I agree. I agree totally.
reinterpret their mythologies into our mythologies.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Create an ecosystem. Like now, if you today we have this movie metaverse coming out,
Yeah,
but
yeah,
we also need to have a metaverse like the Ramayana or the Mahabharata. We need to have our own metaverse.
yeah.
We need to create those mythologies. So I appeal to all the people here. If you are willing, please connect with me. I'll be happy to assist. I have done some of my bit, but I need more writers,
Hmm.
and I'm trying to do that on a way. So thank you for this. I'm really happy. If you can answer me on these 2 points,
Yeah,
shamanism
yeah,
and shamanism,
yeah, yeah.
please. Thank you.
It's nothing to do with the shaman of this thing. The word is samana. Samana means somebody who strives. They are renunciates. Like in the Brahminical scheme of thing, you don't renunciate your house. You are a householder. The Brahmin is a householder. So anything to do with renunciating the home, going for the deeper inquiry is a part of shamanism or samanism. Okay. So, this later on, the Brahmanism adopted the tenets of Shramana tradition, like in their ashram dharma. They has to, at the time of Ashoka, as we have seen, there was no varna, there was no ashram. But then they are the latter developments to counter the great tradition of the mainstream tradition of India. So that's about Samanism. I think Dhauli is a beautiful place. I have been there, and the art historians are interpreting in terms of different things. As you will see that you can see that elephant is half out, is half developed. So art historians are saying that Ashoka, the horse, the elephant is Ashoka himself, who is trying to come out of the gravitas of the wars and all, because the Dhauli inscription is all about that. And elephant at the time was a war machine. It was like the tank of today. So the people from the West came to India to get the elephants as a war machine. And we know that Alexander was offered 500 elephants. And there were elephant sanctuaries where the elephants were trained in the warfare. And there were jungles which were maintained, and the revenue was, they were sold, the elephants were. So the elephant was a very important, I think, very, very important animal at the time in the ancient India. And there are very beautiful books showing how the elephant and how the elephant training was done, and how the forest of elephants were maintained, how there were special trainers who trained the elephants. So I think having an elephant in the Buddhist sites, I think I have not seen that in Ajanta. Maybe you're talking about Bhaja caves, where they have carved the Ganesha, and that Ganesha is of a recent origin. I can tell you that.
No. I'm referring to Aurangabad caves, not Ajanta, not
Aurangabad,
Ellora.
that's definitely a recent one. I remember Aurangabad caves. Yeah,
Exactly. I mean, if you go that uphill,
I have
the
been
one
to
on the
Aurangabad
first one
caves.
on the
Yeah,
right, the
yeah,
first
yeah,
one on the
yeah.
right.
Yeah. They've been nothing. In Buddhism, these symbols mean that the center point of every Buddhist iconography is Buddha. Even it's Mahayana, Vajrayana, whatever forms there are iconographically, the centerpiece is the Buddha. Always the Buddha. So, any other things?
Sir, can I ask one question, sir?
Yes.
Sir, the inscripts on the rocks and stones were started in Ashokan era. So before that, there was no script or writing.
Right.
So how the people were communicating?
There was no
Only verbally.
See, this is a very difficult question to answer, because some of the scholars are saying that at the time of Buddha, the people were writing on the tablets. But we don't know. There is a reference where Sariputra was taking down the notes of what the Buddha taught. But it's very difficult to say on that, because we definitely had the scripts that time in the world. Like in India itself, there was this Indus Valley civilization, and they had a script, right?
Yes.
But what happened inter alia for that 100 years, 1000 years, we don't know. That's a dark sort of dark matter, dark period, where we have no information from. Only the icon of, what is called uh, the pictographs are there. So Ashoka, when he can use the stone for communication, I'm sure there he was using the other modes of writing as well, like for example cloths, papers, and so on and so forth. For
Yes,
sure.
yes.
For sure.
Yes, sir. Thank you, sir.
Okay.
Sir,
Yes.
one point
Hello?
I want to mention.
Yes, Nawal.
Yeah, Javim Dada, sorry. Okay.
Go on.
There's an issue with my laptop speaker. I just want to discuss and ask also. We all are aware that whatever rich history we have in India, the present India, similarly, there are many places in the present Pakistan or even in the Afghanistan.
Yeah.
There are a lot of places, like for example, the old days Takshashila. It's literally grounded now. There are no remains. Like if unfortunately we are not able to visit those sites due to the geopolitical situation.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
So, like Takshashila, there are many places which are mentioned. Let it be by the first Chinese traveler Fahian or even the Huansang. So those are evidence-based places.
Yeah.
Which are recorded actually.
Yeah.
and unfortunately, we have no right way to go there actually now. So at least on the world level or on the UNESCO level, is there anything happening to at least to do some research on those sites?
Actually, Pakistan is doing very well in terms of their archaeological sites.
Mm-hmm.
And if you look at their official Facebook page, you can see that they are doing a lot. And
Mm-hmm.
I think they are doing, to my mind, they are doing wonderful things because they are involving the archaeologists from Italy, America. So it's like they have the international mission. And
Mm-hmm.
they are coming up with a lot of good findings. They are preserving their sites very well. And
Okay.
I think they are now marketing it to the Buddhist countries, and a lot of the Buddhists are getting attracted towards that, particularly
Mm-hmm.
Koreans and the Japanese and the Chinese, because the source of
Mm-hmm.
their faith lies there. Mahayana
Correct.
actually evolved in
Exactly.
that part of the world. So I think they are
Mm-hmm.
doing very well, exceptionally well, and we should congratulate them. And
But
that
unfortunately, we can't take that advantage to go and
yeah,
visit that
we
at
can talk
least
to the
to see.
government. Some of the politicians can talk, like the Sikhs go to Pakistan to Talwandi. Why cannot
Yeah, the
Buddhists?
Kartarpur corridor.
Yeah,
Okay,
yeah,
like
yeah,
that.
yeah. So we have to
Okay.
we have to have advocacy for that. I would like to go there one day.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yes. Okay, fine. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay.
Sir,
Yes, Rajvardhan ji.
sir, thank you for your very nice talk. Actually, it was very informative and new to me. Lot of information I gathered from your lecture.
Thank you.
I want to know the literature or the writings of Ashoka, as you said.
Yeah.
Whether nowadays it has been compiled to any
Yeah.
book. Can you name few?
I would recommend you a few books. There is one book by Herman Kinman, who has written a wonderful book published recently, Ashoka's Inscriptions. A little bit expensive book, like 1,500, but very interesting book. And then this Patrick Olivell's Philosopher King, very interesting book. Charles Allen's In Search of Lost Emperor.
सर मैसेज में डाल सकते हैं क्या?
हाँ, मैं डाल दूंगा राजवर्धन जी, कोई दिक्कत नहीं.
हाँ,
But there is
chat,
lot of new things
chat.
coming up, huh? Lot of interesting studies coming up. If you are interested, lot of
Yeah.
going on.
Yeah. I want to read actually lot of things.
Yeah.
Regarding Ashoka.
Yes.
Please.
Great.
तो सर चैट बॉक्स में डाल रहे क्या अभी आप?
मैं अभी तो नहीं डाल पाऊंगा, लेकिन मैं बाद में भेजता हूं आपको सब.
ओके, ठीक है सर. Thank you.
There is a group created by Swapnil, but I didn't pay much attention to that but if you are interested, Archana Vasant is there. She's a good coordinator.
Kindly share with Nikhil Jaswal. I am in his group.
Yeah, Nikhil.
So
Yeah,
he
Nikhil.
can share. Yeah.
Nikhil is a very key person in our this thing. You can contact him also. Okay. Yeah.
Sir, can I ask one question, sir?
Please.
Sir, just now you told that Japanese and Chinese are going to Pakistan for all those archaeological studies.
Yeah.
But China is not a Buddhist country, no, sir?
No, China is.
Previously it was thought, but
No.
now
China is more Buddhist than any other country in the world today. The Buddhism has come up in China like anything. There is no town or village in China which is not having the Buddhist vihara.
Because in our Pune University lectures, it is been taught that China is not Buddhist country.
There are China, you cannot separate Buddhism from China.
Exactly, we were thinking like that, but the new
No.
the teachers are telling like that.
There are interesting books. I think that's not the part of our discussion today. So let's leave it aside.
Okay, sir.
Sir, from Sharudrupa.
Yeah.
During the Mauryan rule, and even more specifically the Ashokan rule, significantly what we find is no invasion from the external force. And so later on, a lot of invasion happened, and then it is interpreted in a different way. What I could notice here is that during Ashokan period, could be, of course, is a very powerful ruler, could be his army was also very strong. More than that, the external invasion is actually guided by one important thing, that is the wealth. Even looking at Ghazni's invasion, he invaded India to loot the wealth. That's what said. But during the Ashokan period, this wealth was not concentrated anywhere. It was not kept anywhere. Post Ashokan rule, the wealth was concentrated in few hands, and it was preserved in some places. And then that has led to, this is my observation, that has led to the invasion. But historians are interpreting the invasion from a different perspective, and these are misleading. So
that's
what's
a Brahminical conception of the things.
Yeah.
And we cannot buy their arguments, because there was Harsha, there was Pala king, Dharmapala. They were very, very powerful rulers. There was Shailendra. So it is not that the Buddhism has invited attacks. It is the Brahmins who destroyed this country.
Yeah. And even Babasaheb said in the 25th November 1949, so that Mir Qasim's that invasion, the Sindh province, that the Dhir again,
very interesting.
That's there. But we are all, say, brought up with disinformation about history, more of that. Proper information is not given, that's one thing. What is your suggestion on the education system so far as content and then the methodology is concerned, so that Indians are able to realize what they are?
See, basically our social movements, I think, are doing very well. We are all products of the social movements, what is called the parallel education system that has been going on around, since long time of Jyotiba Phule. There is a parallel system that is going on education. We know all these things because, it's not in the mainstream books, right? Whatever I taught today or whatever I discussed today with you, it's not in any book, right?
Yeah.
Isn't it? So we have to look into the scholarly material, construct it, and, come to this thing. And they are not going to teach you, because the stories that you tell affects the power structure. So if the Ashoka story or Ashoka's history comes to the front, that's why the Brahmin hates Ashoka even today.
Yeah.
Even today, they are so, they are so angry with Ashoka for no reason, that even today they hate Ashoka. So, that is our duty. That's your duty. Like, organize such, study yourself first, then, talk to people, arrange seminars, workshops. I think we have to do that, right?
Yeah, through informal method, we'll like to.
Okay.
And with regards,
Anilji.
जय भीम सर.
जय भीम.
हॅलो, जय भीम सर.
जय.
खूप छान झालं सर सेशन. माहिती पण खूप छान दिली. माझा प्रश्न हा होता सर की
हिंदीमध्ये विचारता का? आपल्याकडे दुसऱ्या भाषेतले पण लोक आहेत.
असं आहे का? मराठीत बोलता नाही सर?
बोला.
माझा प्रश्न हा होता सर की सम्राट अशोक यांनी राष्ट्र उभारणी केली पूर्ण. राष्ट्र उभारणी म्हणजे त्यांचा सहभाग आहे. आणि आजही आपण जे प्रमुख प्रतीक बघतो आपण आपल्या देशावर, ते सम्राट अशोकांचेच आहेत. तर आणि तसे संपूर्ण जगभरात त्यांचे आजही अवशेष सापडतात संपूर्ण. तरी सुद्धा एवढा चांगला बुद्ध धर्म त्यांनी हिंसेच्या नंतर स्वीकारला, अहिंसा. आणि त्याच माध्यमातून बोधिसत्व डॉक्टर बाबासाहेब आंबेडकरांनी धम्मदीक्षा घेऊन धम्मक्रांती केली भारतामध्ये. तर माझा हाच प्रश्न होता की एवढं सर्व आपल्या बहुजनांसाठी सर्वांनी केलं, तरी आज आपण एक राष्ट्र म्हणून एक संघ का होऊ शकलो नाही?
प्रश्न थोड़ा कठिन प्रश्न है ये, अनिल जी. लेकिन अभी उसकी शुरुआत तो हो रही ना. शुरुआत हो गई है. और कैसे कोई भी चीज को, कोई भी क्रांति को डेवलप होने को टाइम लगता है. अशोक भी आए तो बुद्ध के 150-200 साल के बाद आए ना. तो जैसा बाबा साहब ने जो भी क्रांति करके रखी है, उसका रिजल्ट आने को ऐसे 1-2 जनरेशन जाने दो.
अच्छा.
अभी जैसे आज देखो, आज आप मराठी में बोल रहे हैं, लेकिन अपने ग्रुप में जो है तमिलनाडु से लोग हैं, साउथ से लोग हैं, नॉर्थ से लोग हैं, हर जगह से लोग हैं, है ना?
हाँ वो तो है सर, सबसे जुड़े हुए,
हाँ, एक जनरेशन
सब
के
पृथ्वी
बाद
से जुड़े हुए।
ऐसे कोई कोई नहीं है, जय भीम बोलो कहीं भी चलो, हो गया अभी इंडिया में। तो इट्स अ पार्ट ऑफ अ प्रोसेस। आप इसको टाइम दे दो, हो जाएगा वो।
अच्छा सर, ओके,
टाइम दे दो, होता
थैंक
है
यू
वो।
सर।
उसको ज्यादा अपना काम है, काम करते रहना। जैसा अशोक ने बोला स्टेडी वर्क,
जी सर,
अशोक ने बोला स्टेडी वर्क करते रहो अपना, दैट इज इट।
ओके, थैंक यू सर।
ओके, आई थिंक वी हैव गॉन। अच्छा, कोई है तो फाइनल क्वेश्चन पूछ लो।
Last question
यस प्रीता।
and last comment.
या
So, is there any advice for students in Ashokan philosophy for students and young people like me?
we need ideals. We all of us need ideals, right?
Yeah,
And if we need a dynamic ideal, I think our movement is not having dearth of ideals. Right from Buddha, the great warrior, the lion of the Sakya Sinya. Look at the images associated with Buddha, the bull, the lion. They are very powerful. They were very powerful people, isn't it? Ashoka, very powerful person. Babasaheb, very powerful. Jyotiba, very powerful. They were so tremendously powerful people. Unimaginable. Aititas, so powerful. So what we have to do, we have to start studying them, reading them, understanding them, get more in love with them, because we can learn only when we love somebody, right? So I think this is a time for us to really, really understand Ashoka, read about him. There's so many good books coming up. If you are a student of history and want to do research, there are so many areas where you can do research. Like I was talking about Kharoshti language. There are only 10 to 15 scholars who can now, only study Kharoshti language and the Kharoshti scripts, literature that is left behind there in Gandhara. Gandhari language. That's called the Gandhari language. Gandhari Prakrit. Like the Magadhan Prakrit, there are many scholars. But Gandhari Prakrit, there are only 10 scholars in the world. So you see, there is a lot to do. Right, Prism?
yeah,
There's a lot to do. So I think if you keep on digging further, I'm sure you will find your niche.
yeah, sir.
So dig on further, strive hard.
So yeah, when you were telling the history and story of Ashoka, I felt deep nostalgia in my heart, in my body, and it was really mind blowing. And in last, I wanna say like everyone know about a Stoic king and philosopher Marcus Aurelius in the world, but we have to tell the stories of Ashoka also.
Yes.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah. So I think we have gone on for a long time, and we are having a very good start of the seminar. As the peak point, about 50 people were there. I think it's a very good start. And I'm sure I have recorded it and I'm going to circulate it widely. I'm going to send it to you all. And the second session, like day after tomorrow, we are going to have Ashoka in the background and Babasaheb in the foreground. And then we will have sort of, exchange of ideas and think through things. And in the last, we are going to go more deep into that. So thank you so much, all of you, for joining today, and see you day after tomorrow. Jai Bhim, Namo Buddhaya.
Jai
Or
Bhim,
should
no,
I say,
thank you,
or should I
thank
say Jai
you.
Bhim, Jai Ashok, Namo Buddhaya.
Thank
Jai
you.
Bhim,
Jai
Jai
Bhim,
Ashok,
everyone.
Namo
Thank
Jai
you.
Bhim, Jai Ashok.
जय भीम,
Yes.
नमो बुद्धाय।
Jai
Jai Ashok.
Ashok.